We expect Chargers star running back Austin Ekeler to ball out again in 2023. But if he does, will the Chargers still be able to afford him in 2024? Today, we're taking a look at the Chargers' key players who are in a contract year.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 7 seasons, but this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen today, and to make sure you never miss the show, go follow or subscribe for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Today, we are going to get into the most important Chargers that are in the last year of their contracts, like Austin Ekeler. If Austin Ekeler balls out in 2023, can the Chargers afford him in 2024? And Michael Davis could definitely cash in if he has another big year.
Yeah, and we just wanted to use today to kind of give an inside look at what the 2024 free agency class is going to look like, and kind of what the impact these players' seasons will have on the Chargers' chances of being able to re-sign them going forward. So the first guys we're going to talk about today, David, are a couple of running backs whose performances will be very, very important and will really shape what the Chargers' future looks like. And it has to start the biggest free agent the Chargers have coming up because of, not being able to get an extension done with him is Austin Ekeler. Austin Ekeler, I understand the fans being upset with kind of the way things went, I mean, it's not fun to see a player you love get traded away or ask for a trade or be unhappy. And
right.
You want to take the team side, and I get that, right? Because you're Chargers fans. You're not just Austin Ekeler fans. But
of course.
Continually underrated. But he is going to be 29 after this season. And the Chargers already have approached him with extension talks that obviously weren't close enough, which led him to seek out the trade, right? But, he's a guy where if he balls out again, I don't know if he's going to get double digits in millions, but with the Chargers salary cap situation, which we've talked about a lot of times, right? Projected $60 million over right now. It feels like he can kind of play his way out of a contract if he plays super well.
Honestly, Daniel.
At least with the Chargers, I should say.
Yeah, definitely. Just the way everything has happened for Austin Ekeler, and I understand everything, at least, through the media has been very amicable, and, they've been very complimentary. Austin Ekeler and the Chargers have both said, what they've needed to say in front of the media. But, I mean, make no mistake. I mean, this situation is going to sour the people involved. And I think for Austin Ekeler, there's a pretty good chance he's going to have another amazing year. Even if he doesn't have another amazing year, just based off of the things that happened in this offseason, I don't feel like there's a very high likelihood that Austin Ekeler is going to return to the Chargers, whether he has the superstar ball out season or not.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the chances are low right now, right? But, you said amicable. I don't know if it was all amicable on Austin Ekeler's side. The Chargers said everything they needed to. Brandon Staley said, gave as high praise as he possibly could.
Right,
but,
of course.
There was a lot from Austin Ekeler, okay, well, I have one more year I have to be here, right? One more year I have one more obligation, right?
Yes, definitely.
Worst case scenario, I have to play with the Chargers in 2023 and then try to find a team who will value me in 2024 and beyond, right?
That's true.
The problem for him is the problem that a lot of running backs had this year, which is if he does ball out again, the Chargers might not be able to come to terms with a running back who's going to be entering that contract in his year 29 season, right? Age 29 season. Obviously, he's aged remarkably.
Like a fine wine, definitely. Still a monster, right?
Incredible care of his body, and he's
shredded.
super strong, everything, all of that, right? But, the Chargers could franchise tag him. And I'm not going to lie, it might make sense after this upcoming season, right? Because
it might.
We're going to talk about Josh Kelley as well. Josh Kelley and him are both in contract years this year. They both have a lot to prove this year. But in Austin Ekeler's case, if the Chargers need a running back next year, they'd have to clear, a lot of space. And it's still unlikely, I'd say, at this point. Yeah. But if he balls out again and they don't want to give him that extension, they still have that in their back pocket. And I know it sucks for running backs. It sucks for NFL players in general. But for the Chargers, it might not be a bad move.
No, it might not be. I mean, the franchise tag is definitely a weapon that the Chargers and every other NFL franchise can wield if they don't want a player to get away. But obviously, that comes at the cost of $10.091 million.
Well, that's at least what it was this year.
That's
so
this
a little
year,
bit
right?
more, yeah.
And so next year is going to be even higher. But that's all guaranteed. That is straight up cash. There's no manipulation of the salary cap there. So. But yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why there are other running backs, according to Austin Ekeler and some others, why they didn't really get paid, because the big stars got franchise tagged this year and took them out of the bidding pool. So
yeah.
those kind of big contracts couldn't really happen because
those
players, right? They couldn't set the market because those players were already locked up. So yeah, I just think that with Austin Ekeler, it's been such a pleasure to watch him, especially over the last 2 seasons where he's been just literally the number one touchdown machine in the NFL. Like no one's come close to scoring as many touchdowns as he has. And there's, very little reason to believe that he's still not going to score, 10 to 12 more touchdowns this season. And if he continues to do that, just that performance, Daniel, it just feels like it's going to, work him out of the LA Chargers type of
what they can
domain.
afford. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like they might just not be able to afford him. And I think this is the hard thing. You don't know what you have behind him, right? And
that's the big problem.
The guy who was most impressive behind him last year, Joshua Kelley, is also in a contract year, right? And I think there's different things at stake. Like Austin Ekeler trying to cash in and make $8-9 million over a few years. Sure. Josh Kelley, it might be just like his NFL future, right? And that's the kind of differences between these guys in a contract year, right? Because if he's bad this year, I mean, 2 out of 3 years he's been 3.2 yards per carry or under that, right? So it hasn't been great for him. But last year, a full yard over his career best. He averaged 4.2 yards per carry. He looked really good. He looked much more explosive. And he has to beat out, Isaiah Spiller. But I guess, when you're looking at this running back position, you're talking about Austin Ekeler and Isaiah Spiller, and Josh Kelley. If Austin Ekeler and Josh Kelley are both gone after 2023, is there replacement on this roster?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question here, and that's the question that Isaiah Spiller is going to have to provide the answer for this season. I mean, hey, I know Isaiah is very, very young. I mean, he's still only 21 years old, but the Chargers need to know. They have to know what they have in him, because he is either going to be the future RB1, or the Chargers are going to have to continue to look for another running back and probably have to draft another running back, which they have done 2 or 3 out of the last 4 years.
Yeah,
so,
3 out of 4. That's crazy.
Yeah, so that's going to have to continue. So Isaiah Spiller is going to have to make that statement this year. If he wants, and it's out there. It is out there for him to take. The opportunity is there. I mean, and hey, a lot of players, that's all they want is that chance to be able to solidify themselves in that that franchise's future. That's the option. That's the opportunity that Isaiah Spiller has before him.
Yeah, I think the hard thing for the Chargers is almost no matter what, it's going to be a need in 2024, unless, they can bring back Austin Ekeler or Josh Kelley, right? Because Isaiah Spiller isn't enough to do it on his own.
Right.
There's some undrafted free agents we'll talk about when we do the running back show as well. But he doesn't have to just show that he belongs with Isaiah Spiller in his case. He also has to show he can be RB1. And those are two different things, right? And that's going to be very hard for him to show. And it's also going to be very hard. It's almost impossible to have Josh Kelley and Isaiah Spiller show it in the same year, right?
Right.
I think the Chargers, the good news for them with Josh Kelley is if he absolutely balls out this year, he'll be a really, really, inexpensive player to bring back more than likely, because I don't think teams are going to be buying in all on that. So it seems like he'd be a guy who could come back on the cheaper side way less than Austin Ekeler, even if he does ball out this year.
I
Right.
agree.
So maybe that's a good scenario for the Chargers where they can bring back Josh Kelley and have him and Isaiah Spiller in 2024. But still, the Josh Kelley, Isaiah Spiller combo in 2024 is something we really have no idea about right now, right? Or just very, very little, based on an incredibly small sample size because of Josh Kelley hitting the IR last year, because Isaiah Spiller getting, 22 touches last year. We just don't know with that position group yet. So it's hard to say that the replacement for Austin Ekeler is on the roster, and he's just not, right? That's just the case. Nobody's replacing Austin Ekeler. Nobody on this roster is Austin Ekeler is ready to take over that role yet. But you might be able to get something different. That's good as well. So we're going to keep talking about the contract year guys, including a couple after this, Michael Davis being one of them, who could absolutely cash in after having the hottest stretch of his season. He's another guy that feels like he might be able to kind of price his way out of what the Chargers will be able to afford. I do need to tell you guys, though, that our partners over at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you guys with players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster, and you're going to like the one we're talking about today. So with the draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. This is who he thinks is the number one overall pick, and I have to agree with him. Quick, which running back has scored the most touchdowns combined the past 2 seasons? That would be the electric Charger Austin Ekeler, whose 38 trips to the end zone since 2021 and featured receiving first role make him a guaranteed fit for the first overall pick in 2023 fantasy football drafts. Ekeler is headed for another 300-plus touches this season and is a consistent producer, following up his 1,558 scrimmage yards in 2021 with 1,637 yards last season when he also eclipsed 100 receptions for the first time in his career and also most in franchise history. Ekeler, who loves the game of fantasy football and especially loves coming through for his managers, has at least one more elite campaign left. With a reworked contract, he's also rejuvenated in a sleeker offense with new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. Moore will help to turn a quick and speedy Tony Pollard into a fantasy star in Dallas and will now have a great impact on Ekeler too. Ekeler will see his usual high leverage work as a runner and remain the focal point of the short passing game for Justin Herbert. That makes him a guaranteed fit to get you off to a good start in fantasy drafts. This Vinny Iyer guy seems like a genius to me. I mean, Austin Ekeler definitely deserves to be the number one overall pick in the draft, but Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it, and they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. Switch gears, crank up the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you'll always find that you'll be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check, get the right parts, get the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Chargers country, let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, well, let's continue this contract year conversation going because there are a lot of key Chargers that they might not be back on the roster in the 2024 season, especially if they have a good season. And David, one of the guys with the most to prove is Michael Davis. But make sure you guys are here next week as well with us because next week we're ramping it back up to 5 days a week. Training camp battles, position group breakdowns, talking about the offensive line, fan mail shows coming to the everydayers next week, 5 days a week. Again, very, very excited for this upcoming schedule and a lot of great content for you guys. But Michael Davis, David, one of the inspiring stories on this team and a guy that we actually were hoping would get extended during this offseason in case the inevitability of him going out and having a really, really good year in 2023. Now, David, going into a contract year, he feels like one of those guys that if he plays well enough, I mean, if he has 5 interceptions this year, how do the Chargers afford to bring him back? You're muted. David's in vacation mode already.
Leave me alone. My goodness, it's been forever since I've actually had a real vacation. But for Michael Davis is definitely one of those great stories, especially a great Charger story. A guy who really had to kind of work his way onto this roster as an undrafted free agent and turned himself into one of the better corners in the NFL. 6 years with the Chargers, 7 interceptions, 5 in the last 3 years, and from 2019 to 2022, his reception percentage allowed went from 64% down to 52% last year, where he definitely had one of his best seasons of his NFL career. 62 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a sack, an interception, 12 pass breakups. Man, he had a great season last year, especially after an up and down season last year where he had some off-field concerns that were really kind of affecting his mindset and his play on the field. He came back rejuvenated with a clear mind and he went out there and he played his heart out, especially when the Chargers needed it the most.
Yeah, he had the best stretch of his career so far. And I mean, it'll be interesting because he's an undrafted free agent, right? He signed a pretty lucrative 3-year deal, right? Almost $20 million on that deal, or plus 20 plus million on that deal. So, like, he got more than we thought he would get, definitely a couple of years ago. And it seems like we would never see that form from him again, right?
Yeah.
But he returned, and he was great. And now, like, you're possibly facing the possibility of him not being on the roster in 2024 if he plays great. If he has 5 interceptions, like I said, in 2023, how much is he going to make? He's going to be 29 in 2024, right? So still right there as far as cornerback ages go. He's fast enough. He's shown the ability to tackle. He did not miss a tackle after week 11 last year. That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, that's nuts. Especially talking about this player who we've watched grow through, right? Like grow through a lot of up and downs, right? And just with this team, he's grown so much. Is his replacement on the roster, though, David? I think that's a fair question to ask of someone, who's been pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, honestly, to answer that question, it would probably require some shuffling. I think, it would have to be J.C. Jackson on one side, Asante Samuel Jr. on the other, and that would require Jasir Taylor to be the guy to step in and man the slot.
Yep.
So that would have to be the combination of guys that you would have to throw out there if you're wanting that replacement to be on the roster. And the Chargers, they frankly kind of need it to be on the roster, or they're going to have to target it pretty high in the draft as well.
Yeah, and it feels like they'll have to, regardless. But, like, unless you see, Jasir Taylor take off this year. But, yeah, I mean, the replacement in this scenario would probably be Asante Samuel Jr., assuming he's going to be the slot this year, moving to the outside, and Jasir Taylor hopefully taking over that spot. But this is a guy that's going to be a lot harder to replace because of what the Chargers didn't do during this offseason, and that is Gerald Everett, David, who all of a sudden becomes one of the biggest names for the Chargers headed into free agency in 2024.
Yeah.
Because he's been good. He's been good, and not only has he been good, David, but the Chargers do not have a replacement on this roster for him.
No, they do not. Yeah, I mean, not the way it's currently constituted. And for Gerald Everett, he's a guy that you look at his stats, you literally see a progression every single year.
Yeah.
More receptions, more receiving yards, touchdowns. It's something that he has gotten better every single year. And I think another year for Gerald Everett in this offense could really turn him into a 58 reception, 550-yard tight end to a 70, maybe 850, and maybe 6 or 7 touchdown type of tight end. And in that situation, then you're probably gonna have to say goodbye.
I mean,
to
he signed
Gerald
for 2
Everett.
years, $12 million, right? So, like,
Yeah.
if he plays the best he ever has, and he'll be 2 years older, obviously, but
Sure.
like, it's hard to imagine coming less than $60 million per year, and like it feels like anything more than that is out of the Chargers price range.
Definitely. And as far as the replacement on the roster, the only candidate to really fill that role is Donald Parham Jr.
Yeah.
And the one thing I think we really neglect to remember or talk about here is that Donald Parham Jr. is still only 25 years old.
That is crazy.
He is so super young.
Yeah.
And if he is able to put it all together, the physical gifts and tools are there. He has the size. He has the catching ability. He has the stop and start ability. He has that. He just has to show it on the field by being available every single game and doing what he does and making the most of his opportunities. But he's only 25. He still has a lot of time to grow. And hopefully for the Chargers, he's able to actually play a full season and see what the stats look like after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to rely on that, right? Like, I mean, Gerald Everett is such a good yak guy. Like, Donald Parham is a decent yak guy, too. But Gerald Everett, that's his game. Like, he's going to fist fight you if you want to tackle him. He's 7th in the NFL out of, 29 with tight ends with 50-plus targets, right? And as far as 5.8 yards after the catch per catch. We talked about Josh Palmer in the threes. You have Gerald Everett up there at 6. If you include the playoffs, he was 3rd. He averaged 13 yards per catch after the catch in the Chargers playoff game.
Wow.
So, he's going to be hard to replace. The Chargers didn't get a guy to come and be the heir apparent to him this year. And just Donald Parham hasn't shown that he consistently be on the field and, producing for you. And it's hard to, feel really good about that, especially when 3rd-round pick Trey McKitty has not panned out to this point. But there are other guys we have to talk about, including a couple of defenders who not only are going to be trying to get back on the Chargers and play well enough for the Chargers to want to re-sign them, they could be fighting for roster spots, David, because if these two guys we're going to be talking about don't produce, they could end up out of the league if they're not, if things don't break their way. So we're going to get into that coming up right after this. First, though, I do need to tell you guys that one thing, the best thing that I brought for my wardrobe on vacation was my bird dogs. My bird dog shorts, total game changer. It was so nice when we got that package. I was so excited to get my bird dogs, and I found out that this vacation is the best possible place for me to have them. Because not only are they comfortable, they're flexible, right? They're stretchy. You're not getting those dry, boxy shorts. You don't look like a Lego person. You're getting something that's fashionable, that looks good, and that your wife wants to be seen with, right? You don't want to be upsetting your wife. I haven't been married for a year yet, but I learned that part of it very quickly. And with bird dogs, you get the stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. And the bird dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. Bird dogs fixes all the issues that you have with your normal boxers by inventing a cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you get the way slimmer look without having to sacrifice your movement ability. And I can tell you, golf on vacation, pickleball on vacation, going to the pool on vacation, all things I've worn my bird dogs for. And that's a great thing. You don't even have to have boxers. You know how great it was to be able to pack my suitcase and have shorts and boxers at the same time? Like, that's a game changer. I saved so much space. It's so much nicer to just not have to worry about what boxers I'm going to be wearing. So I'm going to be wearing my tight wads, or I might go and get some Lunchman Larry's or some Gabe Ruths. But you guys, all you have to do is go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL and enter the promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. All right, guys. Well, we do have a couple more guys who are fighting for much more than I think just a lucrative contract. And the next guys we're going to be talking about, it seems like even if they play super well, might not break the bank, but what they could do is extend and prolong their NFL career and find be meaningful pieces on some defense, even if it's not the Chargers. And we're talking about contract guys who run a contract year. I think the biggest name, the name we've had to talk about the most, right, and keep wanting to see if he can be that guy, is Kenneth Murray. And David, Kenneth Murray is now headed into a contract year where, truthfully, it feels like he could be playing for his, career in the NFL. If he has another bad season in the NFL this year, who's going to want to sign him? Especially when the last two linebackers you had who played great didn't seem like they had much of a market.
Yeah, I mean, especially not a market with the Chargers. And I think, just given the trend, I don't know how Kenneth Murray is going to be able to come up with a season that would be impressive enough after the other seasons that he has provided you to be able to go to the Chargers and say, hey, I am a guy that you need to put in your future plans.
Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't believe that up to this point, and so he's going to have literally an all-pro type level of season to be able to have that conversation. And then even then, just given the recent history, there's no guarantee that the Chargers are going to want to talk to him. But, I mean, Kenneth Murray has, had extremely high expectations because the Chargers literally traded up
which aren't
in
his
the
fault.
first round.
Right.
They're not his fault, right? But whenever you get selected in the first round, there's a certain level of expectations that come along with that. And unfortunately for him, he's dealt with injuries. He's dealt with them trying him out at a position that he absolutely has no business being, like in 2021 when they tried him outside over the tackle, 113 snaps to be exact, where he was just awful. I mean, he didn't even get close to
what a timeline we live in, man. Kenneth Murray was an edge rusher for a little while.
He was an edge rusher, and it was really, really bad. Also, he only played 11 games that season, and he was very injured. It was just
injuries, position changes,
very bad situation.
He's had plenty of things, right? It's just you're at the point where you can't make any excuses for him, and the fundamental things that he just hasn't done well enough is it's just reactions, right? Him getting to the ball, him making the making the right reads, being a good tackler. And the Chargers, one thing we've been consistently kind of hard on them for is not setting up themselves for success in the future. But this does feel like a spot where the potential replacement for this guy is on the roster.
Yeah, and unlike, most of these other positions that we're talking about, I mean, you actually feel pretty good about this replacement. And it is Deion Henley, the third-round pick from this year's draft.
A.K.A. Everydayers know, also former guest of the show.
Amen. I just loved talking to Deion Henley. The Power Ranger had some just absolutely amazing energy that is really just it's just infectious. And that's the
absolutely.
type of person that you want to be around. I know he's going to be a glue type of guy. He's a guy that's going to shine early on special teams. And I would not be surprised if he finds himself playing meaningful snaps on defense before too long, because this guy is very, very talented, and he is right in the mold of the type of linebacker that the Chargers like to take, a guy that was a former safety. So that's just the type of player that they like in that position. That just seems to be the prototype. Like the Chargers, they like their tall wide receivers. They like their athletic former safety linebackers. So I expect Deion Henley to take over that position at some point this season.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, that would make it very hard for Kenneth Murray to come back. Pulling for him obviously has an athletic skill set that you feel like could translate into something. It's just hard to get your hopes up around it. And after the 2 linebacker seasons the Chargers had and didn't bring those guys back with Drew Tranquill and Kazir White, hard to imagine he's back in 2024.
Especially when they don't have any money at all.
Yeah, I mean, if he actually is an all-pro and beats out dudes like Fred Warner and Shaq Leonard, and okay, yeah, we can talk then. But like, it feels like at this point, what you're just hoping is for a regular season, right? You're never expecting him at this point to be a first-round pick. That dream has gone out. That
ship has sailed.
All you want is a contributor. All you want is a guy who won't be singled out and exposed.
Yeah, be where you're supposed to be. Do your job. Just do it at an adequate level.
And we'll see if Eric Kendricks can help that. And that's
hopefully
what
he does.
Is, right? But let's talk about this guy, David, because this guy's in a contract year as well. And another guy, all these guys are going to get snaps. That's the one thing about this show is all these dudes are going to get playing time, including Alohi Gilman, right?
Yep.
Who's going to start next to Derwin James, has battled with inconsistency, had the best stretch of his career in weeks 10 through 15, but at least according to PFF, really dropped off at the end of the season. And that's kind of been the story of his career, right? He had 4 games with a PFF grade over 70 and 7 games with a PFF grade under 50. So, like, you always have to take those grades with a grain of salt. He had different amount of snaps in all those games for sure, but like that part checks out in the eye test too, because it has been up and down for Alohi Gilman, and he had the lowest missed tackle percentage of his career, which is great. Yeah, but the Chargers only have JT Woods and Derwin under contract in 2023, and I do think the good thing with Alohi Gilman is if he goes and plays really well, I think the Chargers would be able to afford to bring him back.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that Alohi Gilman would be an expensive option. He's a guy who played pretty much none at all in 2020.
Right.
He only had 71 snaps, and then he started to earn himself some more. And then, there was a couple of games last year, especially the Miami game, where you're like, okay, man, that was really, really high quality play right there.
For sure.
Yeah,
but they also probably signed JT Woods so they wouldn't have to bring back Alohi Gilman, right? So that's exactly the other thing. Yeah.
They want JT Woods to be the replacement, right? They brought him in to be the guy to pair with Derwin James because his profile fits with Derwin James and what he does the best. But we all know what the issue is with JT Woods. You got to tackle better. And until he proves that he is capable of doing that, making a move to get rid of or not bring back Alohi Gilman is a lot more difficult.
And it's tough, man, because I know we've been really tough on JT Woods, and we'll talk about it more with like when we do the safety breakdown, right, and talk about that safety group and get a little bit more into some of these guys that might be able to steal a spot at the end of that position group. But like JT Woods had some moments, had some flashes like of things that you can't teach, right? Making the right reads, quick trigger downhill, getting to guys in the backfield, and he just wasn't finishing the plays.
Right.
But like you can see a lot of it is there. It's just the tackling. And we're judging a lot of it based on the preseason, right? And what we saw, in games that didn't count. But like it just was so far from where it needed to be. It was far away from where it needed to be.
But those are the games where you're supposed to ball out, so that's why it causes concern.
Sure, but the Chargers spent a 3rd-round pick on him, right? So it's like they're invested in him. He is supposed to be that guy, but it still feels like it could be a big need after the 2023 season, depending on how everything shakes out. We just have to hope that JT Woods, who will get snaps, right? Like JT Woods, even with Derwin James and Alohi being the starters, he will get some snaps. So like what he does with that is going to be so important for the defense. If that dude can turn into a player, if that dude can turn the physical traits into someone that knows how to use them and also can tackle. Seriously, watch out, because that dude could be an X factor for sure. It's just so hard because we saw how bad he wasn't tackling before. So it's hard to like totally, be fully invested in that. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. We have so much coming for you guys. We're so excited for the everydayers to see what we have planned next week when we start ramping things back up to 5 shows a week. So thank you guys again for making us your first listen. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free in the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also get the show wherever you get your podcast from as well. You can also find us on our social media where we post the show every day. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogmeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD. as well as the show's page at Locked On LAC until we take the whole thing over to Threads. No, I'm just kidding. But we're also on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can also call in. We'll get some fan mail stuff next week. 323-524-7924. Get your 30-second voicemail in, and we'll get it on the show. But that's going to be it. We're coming back from vacation 5 days a week next week. Excited to be back with you guys. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.